Good morning and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital. My name is Keaton Shaw and we're very happy to have you joining us on this morning's edition of the program. Now, we will be joined by our guest commentator very shortly, Alderman Daniel Piper of the Sangre Grande Regional Corporation. But in the meantime, as we begin today's session and discussions, there are two topics of which Sean and I would like to focus on late in the program, and we will just very briefly inform you of it. It's in relation to the unfortunate accident. At this time, there is a lot of political conversations surrounding it, but not deflecting from the center of the discussion is the mere fact that 4 lives have now been lost in relation to the Paria maintenance team, independent maintenance team, who unfortunately was sucked into a 30-inch horseshoe pipeline, a 400-meter pipeline, at around 2:30 p.m. last week, Friday. Also, the discussion we like to focus on as well is in relation to carnival events that took place over the weekend. It seems as though that public health risk, and all public health measures that are in place for COVID-19 were ignored at various events over the weekend. The NCC has claimed that they did not give permission for at least one of these events, but in particular there was an event on Saturday which really drew the attention of the majority of the population, who condemned the actions on social media. The Minister of Health, of course, dodging any questions related to this. So we will elaborate a bit further later on in the program. In the meantime, let me introduce my co-host, colleague, and good friend, Mr. Sean Michael Small. Good morning, Sean. How are you?
Good morning, Keaton. I must admit, the news of this accident, while obviously the scale is not necessarily going to compete with the scale of something like COVID, but you do have to ask, this is not something that happens every day. And the mere fact that it occurred, could it have been prevented? What is it that we're doing wrong? And what are the chances of something like this happening again? Not just with Paria, or even with regards to water repairs, but any sort of industrial or heavy machinery, heavy transportation sort of environment. And I think it might be easy to say, well, of course, this is Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad is not a real place. We don't know how to do these things properly, and we always missing something, and we always don't have some sort of safety procedure or safeguard or whatever. But I would say, well, don't necessarily just blame the island for any lackings. One, you could find that anywhere in the world, including first world countries, where people, for whatever reason, negligence, shortcuts, lack of proficiency, certain safety measures are not put in place. But I think also we have to remember that to some extent we do have a pretty good safety record in the country. Our airline has a pretty solid safety record. As far as I'm aware, we've never lost a plane. We've had accidents, we've never lost a plane. Yes, we have car accidents, but when it comes to heavy machinery, heavy industry, it's not as though we have, left, right, and center things going wrong and lives being lost, which in a way makes this situation all the more shocking, because this is not something we're accustomed to.
It's an unfortunate accident, and I'm using the term accident because at this particular point, as I said, there's a lot of political conversations surrounding the incident, and the family themselves have spoken, stating that they have not been privy to information. They've learned quite a lot based off of the press conferences that were held by the Paria managing team, which is very saddening and disheartening, especially knowing that your family, their lives have been lost, because the mission has now been, it's now been moved from a rescue mission to a recovery mission, which is admittedly stating that they have passed away. I think that was inevitable, considering the oxygen tanks would have run out. But even more so, a lot of questions surrounding not only the circumstances, but the rescue efforts in itself, initial responses.
So my only question would be the timing of the initial response, because I think, once you are late, and depending on the situation, it all boils down to who is monitoring. When you go down in the sea, generally speaking, one of the easiest ways for something to go wrong is, well, no one is monitoring your status. So if everybody down in the water gets into trouble, No one's going to know that they're in trouble.
Well, usually, in most instances, at least just for the bit of research that I've done, there are people on board that are monitoring you. They cannot be fully aware of what is taking place under the water. But generally, in terms of oxygen levels and in terms of at least where they are, the point at where they are underwater, they can't really tell how much the depth of which you are, but they can tell most of the times your location. That is the case, which points to the question, and I'm glad you brought that up, Sean, which points to the question as to initially what transpired. Because again, there is a story that is out there circulating within the public domain of which PARIA has not verified. So I cannot say for certain that is the exact cause or the exact situation. But there is a bit of a story that's circulating, and I'm trying to figure out exactly how did we get to this point. Was there anybody monitoring this situation before? They said, the statement from PARIA said that they initially lost sight and lost contact of the individuals. So does that mean that no one was monitoring them at the time of the incident?
Well, not necessarily. However, it does lead to the other question. If they were being monitored, you should have generally known where they went. Mm-hmm. They disappear, there's a pipe. The first thought should have been, they probably, because it's 5 of them. In the open sea, it's not as though they're just all going to disappear. A current is going to take all 5 of them just randomly out, away from vision before you could notice it. But they could get sucked by the pipe. From reading some reports, it appears as though the suction was strong enough that it was not going to be just a gentle, a gentle tug.
This is a pressurized pipe.
Right.
So as soon as you cut it and it releases that pressure, it now becomes a vacuum.
So now the question is, didn't anyone plan out this repair properly? Why is it that it seems as though the divers were unaware of what would have happened to them? And then now the other question is, okay, even if it was a release of pressure that sucked them in, because I would think if the situation was so large that the pressure release would have been so, the scale would have been so large that the pressure would have been constant over the course of at least a day. It should have been a fairly obvious scenario. Like what caused the suction? Why was it mechanical? Mm-hmm. That's what I'm wondering. Like, where was the planning and, I guess you could say, the response? If it wasn't mechanical, then it makes more sense why the rescue was so difficult. If it wasn't anybody monitoring the equipment to see how they could have made the situation safer? Let
me just remind you, I'm not sure if you, the viewer, are hearing of this incident for the first time, but let me give you the very little bit of information that we have at this point. According to most reports, at around 2:30 p.m. on Friday, Christopher Boudram, Faisal Kurban, Rishi Nagasar, Yusuf Henry, and Kazim Ali Jr., all employees of private contractors, and that is very important to state at this point because people are calling for a criminal investigation to take place. There is need for an independent investigation to take place, but let's establish they were of a private contractor from LMCS Limited were conducting an underwater maintenance exercise. Again, that in itself is very bland. It's very vague. Mm-hmm. But again, all respect to the family, we're just try to see through this as best as possible, analyzing it. But our condolences, of course, to the family. They were conducting an underwater exercise at number 36 Sea Line Riser on berth number 6 at the company in the Point Bears facility. An accident occurred which sucked them into the pipeline. Ali Jr. is the son of LMCS's managing director, Kazim Ali. Now, one individual was recovered, and that's Christopher Boudram. He remained in a stable condition at the San Fernando General Hospital up to last night, where he indicated that his colleagues were also in the pipeline. So the initial thought is that during their maintenance exercise, the pipe was cut. The pipe was cut, whether or not that was on purpose or accident, although I cannot see how it was on purpose. And because the pipe was cut and it's pressurized and that pressure was released, it turned into a vacuum and it sucked all 5 men into the pipe because Christopher Boudram, the individual who was recovered from within the pipe.
Well, the thing is, though, you can't just, if it was pressure that sucked water in, right? You're not going to cut the whole pipe open and then magically the pressure starts to get sucked in. From the moment you make any sort of cut, water is going to start to want to go through that weakness. So I'm kind of not even sure how you make a cut big enough. Like, I don't even know if you could hold on to your tool, right? After the cut gets open a certain amount of space and there's enough water current then to continue going. So I would have thought that the maintenance would have including cutting the pipe, because a pipe that's big enough for all of the men to also be sucked into, this is not going to be a small cut, you understand? This is not like space where you see it in a movie, the window gets cracked and then the pressure differential eventually blows the window open. This is not a window that a glass window that they cracked, I would assume. This is a steel pipe.
Again, all respects to the families who unfortunately they have lost their loved ones in this accident. But there are a couple of concerns that I myself would now like to express in relation to HSE involved. How long did it take before Paria realized that these souls were lost? Paria has indicated that they sent a submarine sort of device down there to try and get into the pipeline to see where these men were. They said that unfortunately there was some sort of blockage of some type and they couldn't continue that. So what was blocking the passageway? I mean, you may not know immediately, but you may have at least an idea. What did the camera show? Paris seems to have moved very slowly in this entire process. At least from the time the incident came into the public domain, they seem to have moved very slowly. Now, an independent investigation might show us what sucked them in to the pipeline, but we also need to know what emergency measures were put into place and when were these initiated.
The problem of being a small country with very few major accidents is that we are not well practiced on emergency measures, right? And that's not our fault. So we don't, it's not as though we have certain emergencies that occur on an annual basis. So, but at the same time, you know, even though they are not employees of Paria, one could argue that Paria still has a certain level of responsibility. So now it all depends on what independent investigators find or what investigators find, right? Because the conspiracy theories on the independence will probably come out of the woodworks depending. And then it might go from there if the families decide to take it to court. And then we know that it has become politicized. So there's a fair chance of that depending on what the investigators find.
Now, Christopher Boudram, who was recovered, and as we conclude this conversation, because we will be welcoming the Alderman very shortly, Christopher Boudram, who was recovered and is in the San Fernando General Hospital in a stable condition, the question now surrounds as to whether or not he will be allowed to speak. Because the information, again, that was made public was on the part of Paria, stating that Boudram indicated that his colleagues were in the pipeline. But would Christopher Boudram be allowed to speak? Would he be allowed to give details and account of his experience? That also is crucial to better understanding within the public domain, rather than all these questions and the political conversations basically more so overtaking the actual accident. We await for the independent investigation. Whether or not there's a criminal investigation at this point, I'm not entirely sure. But again, condolences to the family. Quite an unfortunate accident. It's really saddening. And it just goes to show that there is always something here in Trinidad and Tobago that we always look to smile. And yet something happens in which another life, and in this instance, 4 lives, are lost. May they rest in peace, and may we learn from this lesson. Folks, let us take a break here on The Content Capsule. When we return, our guest commentator will join us. Stay tuned to The Talking Point.
Let's Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
In these COVID times, things are a little different. You may have some skepticism when it comes to going to the hospital or going into the doctor because of crowds or because of so many people being present. We are now in the world of telemedicine.
Telemedicine is the innovation of using technology to treat patients at a distance.
Zakia is here today. She's going to show us a little bit of what she does as part of her at-home exercise routine. What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
It may seem like the hardest thing to do right now, but we all need each other to wear a mask, wash our hands, watch our physical distance, and stay at home. We need you safe. Together we can make the difference. Together we can curb the spread of COVID-19. So let's be responsible in our actions. The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN Content Capital, and joining us via the Zoom platform this morning once more, we are very, very happy, most happy to have her with us as we continue to have the conversations where we left off last week, but more so diving to this one. Sean and I were speaking to her off-air about it. Alderman Daniel Piper of the Sangre Regional Corporation. Good morning, Alderman.
Good morning to the listeners and the viewers out there. You know, I just want to take time out this morning to issue condolences to the families of the 4 divers. In particular, a Burgess of Sangre Grande, Mr. Yusuf Henry, his family. That family has had an incredible, when I say incredible, unbelievable 3 months. I know in December they would have lost 2 sons, one to cancer, the other to COVID. And now this is a 3rd son who, you know, unfortunately has passed due to this diving accident. You know, our hearts goes out to the families. And, you know, we as well, you know, we want answers. We want to know what really took place. So I want them to know that the whole country, the whole country is, is hurting due to this incident.
Certainly, Alderman, we share with you your thoughts that you would have just expressed. We too were in absolute shock and, as I said, very saddened by this. And you expressed it, most well, that we are all hurting. We share the grief at the loss of these lives. But Alderman, I'd just like to raise on a point to what you would have mentioned to Sean and I off air, and I'd like to, commend you for raising that. Yes, we are all hurting, and yes, we are saddened, but it seems as though we are, I don't know if it's due to the emotions or if it's due to something else, but it seems as though it's caused many people to try and deflect from the actual situation and quickly try to, it seems as though we have so many questions, but it seems as though we're pushing answers and narratives without trying to fully understand and comprehend, as well as respect the family at this point.
Yes, I do agree. This past week has been particularly difficult, from us hearing that Russia invaded Ukraine. Then, we had the housebreaking, the murder that took place in Westmoreland. Then we had this issue with Carnival and people, just flouting the public health regulations. And then we have this situation here. I think a lot has happened this past week. Emotions are very high, and so, but I think it has reached a point where, as you quite rightly said, I may have my views on in terms of, the speed with which it is, things should have taken place with the accident. 4 lives were lost. Who knows if, persons would have gone down in that situation there, if more lives could have been lost. I am no expert in the field, and I do not pretend to be any expert in the field. All I know is from what I see on Google, and it is, as we spoke about, very heart rendering. We are emotional, but me being a politician, even though I do share emotion, I am also, I am quite logical, and it might be hard for some people to understand, but it is what it is. And we look forward to more information coming out of this incident.
Sean, as the Alderman mentioned, we look forward to more information. And it seems as though there is a craving for information, and rightly so. But the emotion mixed with the crave for that information, as the Alderman rightly mentioned, she's not an expert, and neither are we. But do you think that that emotion and that craving for information has led people to somehow render themselves as, we can do a quick search on the internet and become experts, and that in itself has probably led to certain narratives being pushed?
Well, that is an issue in modern times now, with any topic, pandemic, crime, any topic. But with regards to this, yes, emotions are high, and we would want answers sooner rather than later. And the interesting problem is the fact that, unfortunately, unless there's some unforeseen circumstance that we don't know of, by some miracle, it's a reasonable assumption that the 4 men, unfortunately, have passed away. So with that, there's no need to necessarily rush now for answers. We don't need answers right this minute. So rightfully, because this is not a case where, a car slammed into a wall, it's fairly obvious, you could see it from a street level. A lot of things have to be done to make checks, to make sure that we fully understand and don't assume what happened. So I don't necessarily mind the investigation taking its time to be thorough, but a lot of people would not necessarily care to wait. They want the answers now, so they would be looking to see whatever they could get. And history has shown that at times that could be a very drastic mistake, because you don't know all of the particular technicalities.
Well, Alderman, this is where I come back to you, because there was a conference, a news conference by a certain political activist whose name I will not mention now, but he is the head of the Progressive Empowerment Party, and he has called on Acting Commissioner of Police McDonald Jacob to open a criminal investigation and declare berth number 6 at Points Bay a crime scene. He was actually joined by angry relatives who was stating that Pario was being secretive about the situation and denied that they were told anything about the news conference. Now, it's something that we quite often hear, but in relation to this, again, are we, whilst the political activists may be fighting for a cause on behalf of the family, is this in itself going to cause a lot more narratives to be pushed? And again, with that, is it now that we are losing sight of the actual situation at hand, and this in itself could bring more distraught to the family?
I totally agree with you. What I have realized, I'm on social media, and this was a private company. I would assume Pario would have, some liability with respect to the accident. But then I'm seeing it's going on to, the Pario board, they should be fired. The Minister of Energy, he should resign, But as I'm saying, emotion and it drives persons. We want to blame somebody. That is human nature. With respect to a criminal, I don't know if Mr. Alexander has information that we don't have. That someone, when you state something like that, saying it's a criminal act. What I do know about crime, there must be the act, which is actus reus, as well as mens rea, which is the intention. So unless he knows for a fact that someone intended to, cause that incident to take place down there, I think that, he's a bit premature. Well, this is Mr. Alexander we are speaking about here. So, he could say what he wants. But, I wanted to touch on that communication aspect. And I think that is something that we're having a real issue with, and we're having a real problem with, sometimes it is important to let people know exactly what is taking place. It may not be what they want to hear, but, just the fact that, someone is talking to them and letting them know what is taking place. And I saw that the family members, that was their main grouse in terms of the lack of communication. No one was telling them anything, right? Even if it is you have nothing to say, every hour say, listen, you must be able to tell the families, well, this has happened in the past hour, this has happened in the past 2 hours. Something needs to be done. And not just this incident, on the whole. We don't communicate as well as we should.
Yes.
Certainly, it's a point that the Alderman has raised that, as you would have mentioned, it applies to almost everything here in Trinidad. And often, Sean, on this platform, we've heard many instances of, again, I use the term narratives, but it turns to rumors as well. And it may be premature on many of a rumor in itself is premature. But that's the thing. That in itself could be prevented should there be, and if there will be, better communication on the part of the relevant authorities that will be involved in any given situation.
Well, so the premature call for a criminal investigation, that might be prevented from most of the population with proper communication. Those with an agenda, now you're really in a guessing game territory of, how reasonable would they be? Because we've seen where our politics have very often treaded into the realm of unreasonableness. One of the things is the fact that the actual responsibilities, and I'm glad the Alderman brought it up, the Minister of Energy is not able to oversee all of the minor details of the energy sector. That's not even his job. Yes, he is technically responsible and the head. But it's not as though there is a history or a trend of these types of accidents happening, and this is a set of divers that we've lost.
I also believe that the Minister of Energy was not even in the country at the time of this incident.
But that's not his job, right? If there's a freak accident in a Boeing plant, the CEO of Boeing is not the safety inspector that was supposed to go and make sure that all of the plans were in place for that plant. If there was a series of incidents now as the CEO who has oversight, then he is responsible for making sure it's fixed. So now in the realm of the minister is responsible for making sure that corrective and preventative measures are properly put in place and the aftermath is dealt with properly. But we're too quick to go straight to the minister. And the interesting thing is, it's one thing for a civilian to say that, but for a politician to say that, I must warn politicians, when it's your turn and you're the minister and you're being blamed for some minute detail in the ministry that you cannot oversee day to day, right? You would want to say, well, no, how could I have been, practically, it's not feasible for me to have direct oversight of this minor detail. When I say minor, I don't mean to imply that the accident was minor, right? So it doesn't work both ways. You know, you have to be realistic with your criticism to your peers, because when it's your turn, you would want the same treatment as well.
So then, Alderman, how do you remove politics or political motives and narratives from instances like this? I mean, it's really the first time that we've heard of an instance like this taking place. But as I would have mentioned before, innumerable times for various circumstances in the story, in the scripts of Trinidad and Tobago, political narratives, motives, and politics on a whole is pushed. How do we remove that from these instances and situations?
Yes, that's really hard to determine how we can remove this. But as I'm saying, you know, we need to be more logical in our thinking. We really need to be more logical in our thinking and not let emotion, you know, run ragged. I mean, politician or not, we are Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago is our country, our land. It is supposed to be foremost in terms of our minds and in our hearts. I think we lack a lot of patriotism because, you know, patriotism has to supersede any political affiliation or ambition or anything like that. This is Trinidad. All of us need to come together to support the family in this instance, regardless of, you know, how you vote in the voting booth. And I think I'm really at a loss for words, but as I just would have stated, you know, we just really need to come together and just put all those things aside where it need be. Mm-hmm. And I just wanna add, the incident occurred on Friday. Minister Young would have flown in, well, you know, on Friday night from Doha.
Yes.
And on Saturday morning, he was there at Paria. He went down there, and I believe he spoke to the family members down there as well. And, you know, I'm seeing people, where's Stuart Young? And he was there. But, you know, we, as I was speaking about in terms of the communication, not just effective communication, a narrative in Trinidad and Tobago is allowed to just be the truth.
Mm-hmm. Well, Alderman, I'd like to just segue a little bit on that point. I'd like to just examine this point with a bit more focus. And you mentioned that we need to focus on Trinidad and Tobago. There needs to be a lot more patriotism, and that is what is lacking. Do you think that perhaps politics has really deflected good sense prevailing? Do you think that, and I don't want to necessarily say politicians, because that in itself will be, at least with the current state of things, be pushing again perhaps a narrative, and I don't want to do that, but do you think that politics and the opinions of individuals, or perhaps the strong mindset of individuals that are entrenched in the politics, is now deflecting good sense from prevailing? Do you think that is causing in itself a lack of patriotism?
Definitely, most definitely. And I consider myself a politician, and, you know, the opinions will range from politician to politician. Everybody is different in terms of their level of thinking and their level of understanding. But the kind of politics that is taking place right now I totally agree in terms of, persons are missing the point. They are missing the point of what is important for Trinidad and Tobago, what it is we need for Trinidad and Tobago. The home invasion that took place in Westmoreland, it came out afterward that the two bandits were there. They were on bail for numerous charges. Mm-hmm. Subsequent to that incident taking place, the Commissioner of Police would have come out again and begged for politicians to support the bail amendment bill. So everything that is happening, everything that takes place there is every action has a reaction. Mm-hmm. And especially as a politician, where you go there and you make an oath, because I had to swear an oath when I became an alderman. You swear an oath to the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes.
You swear an oath to people of Trinidad and Tobago. So I do agree with you.
Sean, I know that we started off speaking about this accent, but it really has caused us to segue to this particular point. And it's a very important point, and I hope the viewers watching will understand the relevance and the importance of what we're discussing. But that we often criticize those in authority, whether it be politicians or those appointed by politicians, for their lack of service to the people of Trinidad and Tobago and to the cause of prospering Trinidad and Tobago. We want people to work on behalf of Trinbagonians, but do the citizens themselves make an effort, or have we become complacent, and becoming complacent, complain?
I think that is a big part of it. You see that with regards to the engagement to the political process, to the engagement of consultations. Yes, there will be people who go to these things, and I'm not saying that there aren't, but how much of it is done, how much communication is done, how much communication is demanded, right? We only kind of demand it in times of crisis, but generally speaking, it's fine. Yes, the family will be upset about a lack of communication. But how much does Joe Public from Diego Martin, or Joe Public from Marabella, or Jane Smith from San Fernando, right, publicly outcry to their elected representative and says, no, we need more information about this, we need more information about that. Not just the things that directly affect you, but the things that affect somebody else that doesn't directly affect you. Mm-hmm. As a population, to stand up for what our needs are, because you can't take it for granted. This is one of the things. There's a very strange phenomenon where, as much as I criticize politicians, you have to be realistic and practical, and as the Alderman said, logical. Mm-hmm. You cannot on one hand say politicians are the worst, politicians are so bad, politicians are so lazy, politicians are so inefficient, politicians are so selfish, and then your expectations are perfect robots who will not only handle every scenario perfectly, but will be able to handle what would technically amount to 160 work hours every single week, because of the amount of different things that you expect them as one individual to have to do or to be able to do perfectly. And it's like, well, hold on. Have realistic expectations. One, politicians are only human. And two, they cannot literally be perfectly knowledgeable, perfectly execute, perfectly reasonable in everything. That's just not a reasonable expectation.
Okay,
but people do it, whereas when it comes time to hold themselves to account, well, I'm only human and things hard and I have things to do,
Right. So let's focus on that for one quick second. And I'm posing this to both you and Alderman Daniel Piper. You use the term, we expect these individuals to be experts in almost everything. But is that a fault, though, of the heads, that we do not appoint the relevant experts, those with the expertise, the skills, the knowledge to the best position? Do we must examine that.
We've had this debate before. I'll let the Alderman Wayne, but we've had this debate before. Depending on the position, no, politicians do not have to be technical experts. They just have to represent the will of the people on whatever matter it is.
Alderman, what are your thoughts? What is your opinion on that?
Well, Sean said it very succinctly there. Even if it is you do not have that specific technical expertise, you are required, because most politicians, when I say politicians, I mean ministers of government.
Mm-hmm.
They would have their advisors or technical staff, and to assist them where those things are, when those situations would occur. But I had to clap him, because he said it quite right.
Mm-hmm.
Persons forget politicians are human, and as humans, there are times that we make mistakes, right? There are times that we make mistakes. We live in a country where a politician, it's basically like you're in an aquarium. Everybody's looking to see when it is you're going to do something wrong. So you might do 95% things right, and the 5% times where you're not up to scratch, they will hang you over the coals where it is concerned. Mm-hmm. So, where politics are concerned, at the end of the day, as we said, you put yourself there as a politician. You put yourself there to serve the people, and you try to serve the people to your best ability. It may not be what they would prefer or what they would like, because we live in a society. I'm telling you, I would have helped somebody, I would have helped a sister to organize to get a job, organize, to send out application forms for HDC, and you would have been doing these things for them continuously. And then the one time I say, listen, I can't give you a hamper today, I need to give this person a hamper now. And they vex, and they will call you out on Facebook and say the worst things about you. They will never talk about what it is you did for them, So we just have to be mindful about that. There's two sides to every story. Well, sometimes they say three sides, and sometimes give the politician a little chance. Give the politician a chance. And because not every time that, not every time, even as a human being, not every time, you will be up to scratch or, doing what it is you need to be doing or what would,
So in concluding this particular conversation, Alderman, when do we stop giving those chances?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
When is it, do we stop giving those chances?
When would you say that they've had enough chances, and now you do have to be practical? Like what is the limit then? Because I'm sure there's some cynic that's asking that.
Well, but as I said, that depends from politician to politician and person to person. What it is I could take, another individual can't take. So that's a real subjective question.
Mm-hmm. Very much subjective, it is. But nevertheless, thank you very much for at least giving us that response, sharing that with us. Well, Alderman, I know that we had topics that were really pre-planned, but considering the circumstances, you can never plan for this, and you have to have this conversation. And I think it's quite astounding that we started off by noting the terrible loss, not only to the families, but to Trinidad and Tobago. We've lost fellow Trinbagonians in a very unfortunate, a terrible accident, and may they rest in peace, and may the families, well, our condolences to the families. But as I said, it's astounding how we were able to build a conversation out of this unfortunate accident, and hopefully we ourselves learn from this unfortunate loss. I hope I'm not being unkind, and I hope nobody takes that comment as being disrespectful. I must put it out there, because there might be those who are quick to jump to that conclusion. But I really hope that we can learn from this in an all-around perspective, not just in terms of health and safety, and not just in terms of the exercises, the maintenance exercises that will be conducted, but generally in terms of the narratives that are pushed, the politics that are pushed, and we need these answers right now. So let's use social media, or let's use the internet and become experts. I really hope we can take a learning lesson out of this.
Yeah. I hope so too. Thank you so much.
Alderman Daniel Piper, thank you very much for joining us once more. It's a pleasure having you on the program, and we look forward to next week, Monday, once more, where you will join us.
Okay then. Goodbye. Have a good day.
Goodbye.
You too,
Have a
Alderman.
great day. The Alderman, Sean, unfortunately has lost a colleague and a good friend in this accident. And as I said, this is a loss that Trinidad and Tobago shares, the tragedy and the hurt that goes with this. We will never fully feel to the extent what the family is feeling and what they are going through, but we certainly are with them. Our thoughts, our well wishes, our prayers are with them at this time. Sean, as we conclude, as I said, hopefully we learn from this.
Yeah, just last thing, it's become politicized before the political level really comes into play. And I think that's a shame, because technically speaking, if a cabinet minister was involved from the very beginning trying to make decisions on the rescue process, that probably would have been criticized, and rightfully so. He's not a technical expert. Why is he trying to make those decisions? So the fact that he's been preempted with calls or complaints or criticisms, calls for criminal investigation, cart before horse. Slow down. If you want to criticize, give your opponent the chance to make mistakes. Don't criticize him before he's even had a chance to do anything.
But if we are to be fair, and as I concluded that discussion with the
That's on the political side. I'm not saying all right.
As I conclude that discussion, and I will conclude it here as well, when is it that we stop giving chances, and at what point do we recognize or do they recognize that they have had enough chances? I suppose, again, that's up to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Folks, let's take a quick break here on the program, and when we return, well, we'll take a quick look at what took place over the weekend on the other side of the spectrum in relation to Carnival. Stay tuned to WESN. This is the Content Capital. This is Talking Point.
AM Prime on WESN, the only place from 6 to 7:30 a.m. where you can get the most analytical and thorough interviews and regional reports.
The Barbados Labour Party, led by the Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley, once again able to achieve a clean sweep in yesterday's general election.
I think a lot of people have underestimated the power of Tobago nationalism.
If the government is afraid to say it, I, Martin George, I am saying it this morning on your show, Andy. There will be no carnival before Ash Wednesday.
Grab a cup of coffee and start your day right watching AM Prime with Andy Johnson weekdays from 6 a.m. Only on your Content Capital, WESN.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
A reminder from WESN. We urge you to protect yourself and others from the spread of COVID-19. Stay safe by taking some simple precautions. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand rub. Maintain a safe distance from anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Wear a mask. Don't touch your eyes, nose or mouth. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay at home. If you have a fever, cough and difficulty breathing, seek medical attention. Following the above can help us all to help each other.
Welcome back to Talking Points here on WESN, the content capital. Sean, with the time that we have left, let's examine what took place over the weekend. Now, the Minister of Health actually dodged questions related to COVID-19 measures at certain carnival events that would have taken place between last week and this morning. Last week, Thursday, there was a particular event called it dealt with Aaron Voice St. Louis, in which people on social media condemned the fete of taking place because of restrictions in relation to COVID-19. But putting that aside, there was another incident that happened over the weekend at a water park or water-themed park in Chaguaramas. And during that time, the first thing that came to my mind was there's no adherence to any COVID-19 protocols at any safe zone event or that's supposed to be deemed as a safe zone event. Whether or not the individuals were fully vaccinated, that's one thing to be really seen to if they have verification for all the individuals that were there. But there was no social distancing, no mask wearing at any point throughout the footage that we would have seen. Furthermore, it's not the first time during this COVID-19 pandemic that this particular water-themed park seems to have breached protocols that are in place and public health measures. Last year was a similar incident, a similar situation in which it came to light that they were operating and private parties were being held within their compound. And they've gotten away with it. They've gotten away with it. But before I speak any further, why don't you take a look at the incidents and you share your opinion and thought with us later in the program when we open up the phone lines. Let's take a look at this video from Saturday. So everybody's having a good time, and I'm happy that people are able to have a good time. I mean, we want to get back to that sense of normalcy. At the beginning of the video, you would have seen social distancing taking place. And then, of course, as the music and the moment hits you, we tend to forget about that. The issue for me here, again, we can have that debate of whether or not public health measures at this particular point makes any sense. But the mere fact is that they are in place. The mere fact is that it's still implemented. And whether or not it was an oversight on the part of management, or whether or not it might have been bad in terms of public relations, or negative to what was advertised, or what was the entire theme of what they were trying to achieve at this event, it seems as though that they did not implement strict measures of which would have initially allowed them to have this event. And once more, the Minister of Health has dodged questions about this. And furthermore, I don't know whether or not this particular venue is going to be prosecuted as would other bars that during this COVID-19 pandemic in which they were allowed to operate have been. I don't know if this theme park will face the brunt of the law as others have. And again, whilst we haven't heard much as yet, it's only Monday, only individual citizens on social media have condemned this, and the opposition to a certain degree have also condemned it. But the question now goes, Sean, apart from the debate of the sense or the necessity of public health measures, once more it arises whether or not the law applies to certain individuals, whether it's applicable to you or not to me, or applicable to me and not to you. That once more is on the tongue, or the cusp of the tongue of citizens questioning this.
I think there's a lot of complicated factors to consider this. One, is this a case where, okay, we will allow informally certain excesses here and there depending on the situations. And the problem with informal things is, generally speaking, they tend to get out of hand and be unfair. Because you're dependent on the judgment of the man on the scene, the individual police officer on the scene, etc., etc. Or, as you've alluded to, is this the case where the public health regulations should be reconsidered? The minister did say that they are being looked into. There is a practical, you could say, almost, it doesn't seem to make sense, right? If a taxi will have, it's not as though a taxi is going to be limited to 1 or 2 passengers. It's going to have, 3 passengers at least? That's enough, even with the windows down. There's a certain degree of proximity and congregation in the car. For the most part, depending on other areas of the public, you see it as well, where some rules are very strict, and at other times it's not so strict. You do kind of question what is the point. I will say this though, we hope that the pandemic's over. We think that there might be signs that it's over. There is a new variant of this variant, and it is not fully understood yet. It is thought to be even more transmissible than the most transmissible variant, Omicron BA.1. Now this is even more transmissible, Omicron BA.2. Is it more deadly? That is debated by various scientific and medical circles. We don't know for sure. The WHO is looking into it. Hopefully it is not, because that could only prolong this suffering. But do we need the public health regulations now? On a practical level, if we're going to see in our everyday life, we're going to see holes in the enforcement. We do have to question the practicality of it all. As
we break for WESN's News on the Hour, I will simply conclude by asking, why are we still limited in terms of church services, in terms of weddings, in terms of funerals? Why is there still limits to that when there seems to be no other limits?
Schools are not safe zones.
Exactly, and there are no other limits.
And there's no 6 feet social distancing in schools.
To these events, there seems to be no limits, and just adding to that, it seems as though there are no limits on political rallies either.
The police officers was reported to have not been wearing their mask at these events either. So it's not just members of the public. You have to call into question now.
We're playing a game at the highest level. Right. How do you expect those?
But it's outdoors. How practical, how necessary is it? Those debates should be had. Now is the time.
If law enforcement is disregarding the law, how do you expect them to enforce it?
That's the other thing.
Anyway, folks, let's break for News on the Hour now here on WESN. And when we return, we will open up the phone lines this morning and give you the opportunity to express your views. Stay tuned to Talking Point.
Seven is out. All day is in. WESN News on the hour.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
We are WESN, the premier platform for Caribbean content. WESN, covering West, East, South, and North. WESN, we entertainment, sports, and news. WESN, available on Green Dot 7, Amplia 118, Airlink 17, B-Mobile 107, Digital 21, ICN TT 105, and Flow 110. Connect with us at WESNCC or stream online at www.wesncc.com. WESN, your premier platform for Caribbean content.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Alexa, can you play my song, please?
Every day across Trinidad, Flow is connecting communities near and far. Our dedicated teams are always working to keep you connected to the world beyond your doorstep. Improving internet accessibility across Trinidad, one home at a time. At Flow, we work hard for you, so you work hard for your family on the largest high-speed network. Connecting you to more every day with Flow.
It may seem like the hardest thing to do right now, but we all need each other to wear a mask, wash our hands, watch our physical distance, and stay at home. We need you safe. Together we can make the difference. Together we can curb the spread of COVID-19. So let's be responsible in our actions. The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back to Talking Points here on WESN, the content capital. Just before we open up the phone lines, we'd like to mention again the passing of a legend. Sonny Rambadin passed away yesterday at the age of 92 years old. Between 1950 and 1961, he played 43 tests as the first member of the West Indies side of East Indian descent to play. He took over 155 wickets, I think a total of 158 during that period. But he's most noted for that test series against England at Lord's in the early 1950s, in which he took 11 wickets in only his second Test game. His twin, as they refer to him, Al Valentine, and himself took over 50 wickets in that spectacular series. Valentine passed away in 2007, but 2004, at the age of 74. But their status was cemented in Lord Beginner's song, in which he said, "Those two pals of mine, Ramadan and Valentine." So again, sad news, very unfortunate news. Legend Sonia Ramadan passed away yesterday. Folks, let's open up the phone lines now. You can join us on Talking Point, 623-9376, 622-9338. Good morning, caller from Tobago.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Usually, when I call you, most often than not, I speak about the manner in which people in authority speak to others, right?
Yes.
The way they communicate with you. Before election, politicians campaign in such a way that makes us feel that they are not humans. However, after they get into office, they tell them, well, we only human and we could only do so and so.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
They make you feel that they can do everything.
Yes.
And then after election, they will tell you they're only human.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we have a problem, because they are not honest. But even after election, if you have an opinion that is different to theirs, you are a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you understand?
Yes,
they
I do.
don't listen to you. Even though they have consultations, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have already made up their minds what they are going to do.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and they just do that, so the chaos are right.
I appreciate the point that you're raising, that at times they are the cause.
Yes.
And they are responsible for what we would have just discussed. Yes, I believe the caller is correct. But I do appreciate that point.
Let me just add that so far it seems as though the PDP in Tobago did not necessarily do that, because they said, well, we will promise this depending on what we see, depending on how it goes. They did not make definite statements. They didn't promise everybody everything. So when it came time for them now to take over, they also were upfront with what it is that they found. And for the most part, the details that they provided was not disputed.
Well, it's early days, and we only
Well, it's early days, right.
We only hope that continues.
But yes, the caller is right. Politicians promise any and everything, and how many of those promises are actually delivered.
Good morning, caller from Pitty Valley.
Good morning, Sean and Keaton.
Good morning.
Sean and
Morning,
Keaton,
morning.
did any of you all went any NCC safe zone?
I did not go.
Okay, all NCC safe zone concept style, the pan was well attended. Everybody they was using their mask. It was well safe. The mask what they had, and the calypso voice concert, what everybody said, the cow pens and them was no good, was full. But I guess people was dancing and getting on. His voice is a concert. But I guess he had was to go in there vaccinated. Was a safe zone concert. The other video you all showed down there, I don't know in the pool. I don't know if that was a safe zone place, but I guess it's a pool party. So people was in the pool. I saw there was separated, and a pool party is a pool party. So I don't know if the owner of the place, it was a designated safe zone where the patrons had was to be vaccinated to go in. I don't know.
Well, in order to operate, it would have had to have been a safe zone.
Basically the NCC safe zone, I thought was good.
Good,
good. I thought was good.
Well, thank you for reporting that to us. Thank you for sharing that with us.
The only thing, caller, is that technically speaking, public health regulation should still be observed even if you're vaccinated. So there is that caveat, particularly with the proximity that the patrons were in some of those events and the lack of mask wearing. So like restaurants are supposed to be at 50% capacity, the Omicron is even more transmissible than the ones before it. So there is that.
Yeah.
But
on and on, I mean, I guess we you know, what can I say? Then it are the unofficial ones where was chaos, and I guess it's a lot of work for the police to deal with. But
I mean, to be fair, we questioned, now is the time to debate.
Yeah.
Do we keep these things, these regulations or not?
But
how practical are they?
Thank you very
much. I think you could have a topic about if we should even keep the thing now. We should just
we've been debating that very briefly now and again. But thank you very much, caller.
Have a nice day.
We do have another call.
Yes. Good morning, caller from Digger Martin.
Hello.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Small and Mr. Shah.
Good morning, sir.
You started well by mentioning the legend Sonny Ramadan. But his legend will continue, you know. You know why? Paria is bowling a googly at the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. So, in itself, their attitude towards those people who is presumed dead is synonymous with a mystery in what is happening. I am saying we have to get it right, and we have to start with the management. And I was hoping that OSHA would have come out and start an immediate investigation to pinpoint where the fault lies and who is accountable for it. For example, when we shut down everybody and we send home everybody, we send them all they say. This is a highly skilled industry. You need people with a particular competence. Did we retain all the health and safety personnel when we shut down Petrotrin to transfer them into Heritage? Did we have a board who understood it? Is there a quality policy within Heritage? Because if you have a quality policy, you have a HSC policy, you have a OSHA policy, then the people who are your vendors, most likely you would have vetted them so you would know if they could do the job. You understand what I'm saying? We have that expertise 100 years in the business. Who caused this? And I'm hoping that somebody shut down the barrier for a few minutes or few months to prevent more lives from being lost. The board structure is at fault. I am putting the blame on the board structure. They're supposed to oversee. They will want to blame it on the operation, but it's the board. This is where procurement policy, a proper procurement policy, you would have vendor validation.
Well, caller, what you also need to understand is that even though the board has oversight in terms of the operations and the business of the company, the board does not oversee the day-to-day running and the day-to-day business.
But you manage it. You have to ask pertinent questions. That is why you have to have a competent board.
And I think pertinent questions will be asked. They will have to be asked.
Of oil industry, you can't put a lawyer who doesn't have no skills in it.
But caller, thank you very much. Have a good day. Have a good day. Good morning, caller from San Juan.
Hello, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I just want to touch on 2 points, please.
Sure.
One point is the blaming game now have to stop concerning the fellas and them who died in the oil field. What we have to do now is what is prepared for these family members of these fellas, their wives, their children, what sort of compensation is given. These are the things we have to talk about now because they already died. Whether they died from negligence or not, these people had gone.
Yes.
And my sympathies go out to the family.
Yes.
Right? And my second point is that I want to know after the carnival what kind of new variant will come out because they continue to have us like to be in jail. Because look how everybody is sitting without masks. Mask is not important right now. Is what they're planning to do. Are they going to carry on to the next 3 years or 4 years like how we are doing now? What the state of the country will be. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. A valuable point, caller, in relation to the second point that you made. Again, that debate as to whether or not restrictions at this point make any sense at all. But adding to that, I suppose we will await to see if there is any spike at all after all these events. and then the Ministry of Health will make a decision. If there is a spike, they will say, well, you see, this is why we have restrictions still in place. This is why it's needed. It's not necessarily adhered to, and we don't get the police service to enforce it. But this is why we have it there, and we're doing our part. I think that might be the case.
No, but again, it goes back down to the fact it took so long to decide that they were going to have carnival. If you're going to take so long to make the decision, then don't make a last-minute decision. Now, again, we said it. Maybe now is the time to question the public health regulations, but because everything was so rushed, you expect it to be perfectly executed at this point in time? No. And the private promoters, yes, you could give them some blame, and as well as the patrons, but at the same time, you have to account for pandemic fatigue and people just being frustrated and not wanting to adhere to these regulations any longer. You have to account for it as the government, as someone with oversight.
We do have another call on the line, but just to add to what you're stating, perhaps, yes, we need to account for it, but at the same time, I also go back to what I'm saying is that it's a personal level of responsibility involved, and we have to play our part and our role as well. Good morning, caller from El Socorro.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, El Socorro in line. Regarding the state of affairs in our country, from the Police Service Commission Bacchanal to the public health regulations to this incident in Paria, everything across the board, public procurement, every single thing. This government's handling of everything has been abysmal. I don't know why we aren't having nationwide protests or nationwide lockdowns or try and get the government out of office and seek a new mandate. Long story short, I now understand why Imam Yassin Abu Bakr run up in that parliament,
Wow, caller, that's
I now understand. I'm serious. Because there's no letters, there is no meeting, there is no persuasion, there is no protest action to get these people to shake this government, to get them to act on behalf of the citizens. Imam Abu Bakr, I wish he was here. I'm serious. Good morning.
Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
A very, very strong, controversial sentiments expressed on your part. But just before we welcome the other caller, I think we need to be mindful of what we're saying. I understand what at least what you're trying to allude to, but of course, let's try and be careful what we put out there.
Now,
the frustrations are very much there.
I would say that we are not there yet. And also when the Imam made the decision that he did back in 1990, I don't know if we were necessarily there yet either, right? Because before we reached to that point, yes, let's see protests if everybody feels so strongly about it. Peaceful protests on the streets, not necessarily storming Parliament.
But very quickly, before we welcome the other caller, we will have this debate. I believe on Wednesday we have this debate.
Yes.
Public health regulations and protest, how they go hand in hand right now, and perhaps the only reason why the government still have certain measures in place is to quell protest. Okay.
I think we lost that caller.
I think we lost that caller.
Please hang up.
Yes, so I think we lost a call, but please call back in on the program, 623-9376, 622-9338. I believe that was a caller from Couva, but you can call back in on the program. It's amazing, though, what the caller from El Socorro was expressing. Now, as I said, we need to be very careful what you put out there. But it does show the other side of it, and that is the frustration, and the levels of frustrations are high. But before we get into that, the caller from Couva is back with us. Good morning, caller. Hello, good morning.
You're on the air.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
I listened to your alderman speaking this morning, and she was trying to defend the management of Paria. Now, I will ask this question. You see the family of the manager of that piper who gave the instruction that close the pipeline and nobody goes back into there to dive?
Well, I do not believe so, no.
I don't think she was defending the management either. She was making general statements. But go on, caller, make your point. Hello, go ahead.
Caller, good day? Are you still with us?
I think we've lost the caller.
Okay, so And here is the thing, and we're actually seeing exactly what we spoke about. We're seeing people rush to make judgments with regards to the caller before and the judgment he's levying on the politicians. Again, it's not as though Paria, we're seeing significant recklessness or negligence in Paria with regards to health and safety, and this is just one incident in a long line of incidents, right? If there's a trend, then you could go and say, well, the minister, why does the minister get involved? But when you have one accident, that's not at the stage where you go to the top. Generally, you do start from the persons directly involved
and
in the
management
situation.
hopefully will oversee that investigation itself. But here's a big thing. I just want to point this out. Where you said exactly what we were speaking about is exactly what we saw. And the caller, you have every right to express your opinion on your point. But I'm not picking on you, but when you called in and you said, you see how the alderman was defending the management of Paria, we need to try and get away from this mindset.
I just want to point out, if they let more divers go down there and those divers were lost, how many people would be understanding, well, we understand because we called for it? No, you'll be blaming management for putting more lives at risk. So that is the hard decision when it's your responsibility. It's easy for us to backseat drive on Monday morning quarterback decisions in hindsight. We have a caller.
Yes, we do have a caller on the line from Pitty Valley. Good morning, caller.
Good morning. From the caller from El Socorro, with his reckless statement, he wants to see in Trinidad and Tobago, Iran, Ukraine, Russia. He wants to see the parliament storm. He wants to see Mr. Devine get shoot. You want to see the Prime Minister get shot. You want to see businesses burn up in this country. And you want to see the place go backward 10, 15 years. That's what the caller wants? That's what he wants?
Well, we can't speak for him.
We can't speak on his behalf, but we hope
No, I'm speaking for the caller. He's listening. That's what you want, sir? That is your solution if you have a grouse with a government or whatever than to protest for elections coming next year? That's what he wants?
To be fair, my memory might be incorrect, but I do believe he said he understood. I don't necessarily know if he outright called for.
But if we're being fair, he said, I wish Imam was here.
Okay, fair enough.
That's what you want, the Abu Bakr style. Have a nice day.
Have a good day.
Thank you, caller.
Yes, you said he did state, the caller from El Socorro, did state, yes, I understand, but he also said, well, I wish the Imam was here.
Let me give my opinion on that issue. I understand why it might seem, or I understand why people might think it is desirable, or it might be attractive, or it might seem to be a good idea. I understand that, the temptation of it. However, you do have to sober up with a little bit of reality, the consequences.
No, well, I also understand.
The consequences of it in its entirety.
I also understand the frustrations and the level of frustrations, but don't let that frustration tempt you into such, how do we best describe 1990?
It usually doesn't end well. Just look at
a stain?
No.
But anyway,
just look at the French Revolution.
They
went all the way around to come back to where they were.
We have a call on the line from Chagonis. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning, Professor.
One thing I should mention about these leases we talked about last week is once you serve your notice for renewal, you cannot be a squatter unless the authority bring to your attention failure to follow the terms and conditions of the lease and terminate the lease. Now, as we regards this Paria business, for years now we have heard that in the oil industry there have been a severe curtailment of preventative maintenance. Some years ago it caused some major oil spills that devastated lab and whatnot. So I went up on the net to the Ministry of Energy to find out when was their last annual administrative report, because that will highlight anything like that. And would you believe the last one listed here is 2001?
I
believe that. Yes, I would.
I believe that as well,
yeah.
Well, those are the reasons for all these mishaps in Trinidad. The failure to enforce our laws, which the annual administrative report will list each ministry what they're supposed to do. Thank you, gentlemen. Unless today, for a change, you have a question.
Did you have a good weekend?
I always have a good weekend.
Wonderful. Have a good day, Professor, and we look forward to hearing from you tomorrow.
We'll hear from tomorrow. Yeah. I think it's interesting what the professor said, because he's right. There are a lot of situations where we hear maintenance is an issue. Generally, though, I do think that when it comes to safety, we do compensate somehow. We haven't necessarily lost people on the ferry. We haven't lost people in an airline accident, in a helicopter crash. There are certain things where, maintenance might be bad, but we haven't lost people. However, we do have to question, is this our tendencies and habits catching up to us finally?
I can understand what you're alluding to in terms of compensating. But I go back to a question I asked before, and I twist around the words this time. How much more do we compensate? How longer do we compensate?
Right, so that's the problem, right? So if the ferry breaks down off the North Coast and people are stuck for a few hours while they're alive, hopefully the boat, nothing happens with regards to the sea and the boat doesn't sink. So each situation is different, right, and has its different challenges and risks. So again, if culturally we are accustomed to this thing, and our politicians and our public servants and our regulators and our officials and private companies are accustomed to being a little bit, it's okay, we'll manage somehow. And then it catches up to us, and then in this case, they did not manage somehow. How much is that catching up to us?
Well, folks, this is where we close the call-in segment. Thank you very much to all the contributors this morning for adding to the discussion, and thank you very much to all Monday Neil pair. Piper, my apologies. I keep getting that mixed up. Please forgive me. But as Sean and I were discussing off-air before the program started, tomorrow we are going to explore in depth the realities of the Russian-Ukrainian war. Why, how, when, where, what? There are a lot of questions, and we may not be able to get into absolutely everything, but we certainly will try our very best to explain it, to explain the circumstances behind it, to explain the effects on it, and hopefully get into discussion as to how this can impact Trinidad and Tobago and how it is already impacting upon Trinidad and Tobago. But that's it for today's discussion. Thank you very much for joining us. As always, in your daily endeavors, please stay safe and keep well. Wash your hands, watch your distance, and wear your mask. Remember, personal responsibility for the overall picture of Trinidad and Tobago, patriotism. Sean?
Well, folks, the crisis in Ukraine has caused a big shift in German and even European politics, you could say. They have come together with regards to unity, and the landscape has changed. And we could expect a lot of things to affect us down the pipeline. However, ultimately speaking, we cannot necessarily have any sort of effect on what's going on there. We could only affect what's going on here. Be responsible for yourselves, for your neighbors, and for your fellow countrymen, because the road to recovery, it might not even necessarily begin right now, but we do have to do our part and start looking towards the future.
Certainly start looking towards the future. We should have started that years ago, but I suppose now we have to take a stepping stone at some point. Anyway, folks, that's it for Talking Point today. And Sean, Michael Small, and myself, Keaton Shawwell, we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.